What about Wake? Welcome to the Voice of College Football as we talk about the Demon Deacons, of course, at 8-0 with a date against North Carolina in a non-conference game to be explained in just a second. We got Les Johns on the line from Demon Deacons Digest on 247 Sports. Hey, Les, how you doing?
Doing fantastic, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you being here. Let's discuss this Wake Forest football team that gets from year to year little respect across the nation, but suddenly in the middle of a college football playoff debate about resume and can they finish off these final four games plus an ACC championship game that is obviously fairly daunting. Tell us about this football team, because a lot of people are going to get familiar with it here in the next few weeks for the first time.
Yeah, it's an exciting football team. Dave Clawson has been the head coach at Wake Forest now. This is his eighth season. And thankfully, as part of the media, we get full coverage to fall camp. So I was able to see every practice, as I've done every year except for last year, because of the COVID restrictions. And I really felt coming into this season that it was the best Wake Forest team in the Clawson era. The question would be how that lined up against other teams, right? Because Wake wasn't the only team in the conference to bring back super seniors. Wake wasn't the only team to bring back a lot of experience. So whereas I thought Wake had the best Wake Forest team in the last 8 years, I still wasn't sure how that was going to shake out across the conference. Lo and behold, it seems the conference is a little bit down. So it's kind of one of those perfect storms. With the run pass option offense that they run, they put a lot of points up on the board. They're scoring about 45 points a game right now. They put up 45 against Duke last week and 70 against Army. Because they run at a fast pace, they snap the ball fast. That means their defense is out there for a lot of snaps. So when you look at yards given up per game, those stats defensively look kind of bad. But then you look at stop rate and points per game, the stats kind of normalize and they become more middle of the pack. It's a team that's like 53rd in the nation in points allowed per game. But if you go just by yardage, it's terrible. But the fact of the matter is that defense is on the field a lot because Wake Forest runs fast. They snap the ball fast and they have a lot of explosive plays. So it's a defense that's put out there for, 70 to 90 plays a game. So they're going to give up yardage. It's kind of a bend but don't break defense. Quarterback, they've got Sam Hartman, who's kind of thrust himself into the Heisman conversation the last couple of weeks. He's playing out of his mind. They've got a triple threat at running back. They alternate carries. Last year, Kenneth Walker was part of a combo at running back, and he's since left and went to Michigan State. But Wake has three capable running backs who are kind of splitting the carries. They've got a dynamic group of wide receivers, capable offensive line, and they've got some disruptive players on defense that are very opportunistic. They have a plus 10 turnover margin so far this season, and they've taken some of those all the way to the house. Travion Red has a couple pick sixes. They make big plays on defense. So it's a defense that gives up some plays, but then they make big ones.
We got Les Johns on the line from Demon Deacons Digest on 247 Sports to break down Wake 8-0 taking on North Carolina in Chapel Hill this Saturday in a non-conference game. So as I best remember that this situation, Les, was that Wake Forest was looking for meaningful regional non-conference games, and instead of going out and playing a Group of Five team or an FCS team or even a Power Five team from another part of the country, why not have a game of interest out of conference that's going to count as an out of conference game, but it's within the the Tobacco Road family there, and so why not play North Carolina? So they did this a few years ago, correct?
Yeah, this will be the second non-conference game between the two, and there are more on the schedule coming up. It was a series that was scheduled, and you pretty much nailed it right. Instead of going to Texas to play Rice, or instead of going to New Orleans to play Tulane, why not have a game that has more local impact, more local interest? Fill up the stadiums. Obviously North Carolina is a quality program, And, it's a much more meaningful game for the fans in North Carolina than scheduling one of those other non-conference games. When with North Carolina being in the Coastal Division and Wake being in the Atlantic Division, they're only scheduled in the conference once every 6 games. I mean, I've covered Wake Forest now for 8 seasons, and I've yet to see them play Miami, for instance. So if you just wait for the conference schedule, these teams don't meet up that often. So this is a chance to kind of continue that rivalry. It's a part of the Big Four. It's considered the Big Four here in North Carolina with Duke, NC State, North Carolina, Wake Forest. There's a lot of pride for winning the state championship, and it's a lot more important game than just a random non-conference game.
Yeah, for folks that don't follow the SEC and the ACC scheduling format, with 2 divisions of 7 teams, you've got a designated rival, and for Wake Forest, that's Duke, and then you rotate against the other schools, so you only see them once every, is that 6 or 7 years, because of the rotation there, and obviously playing everyone in your own division. We got Les Johns on the line from Demon Deacons Digest on 247 Sports. We would ask everyone to please like the video, share these videos out on social media, because if you enjoy the content, others will as well. So share the videos and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. Wake at 8-0, taking on North Carolina. A disappointing season for Mack Brown and company in Chapel Hill. In looking at the schedule thus far, you know what the deal is. Nationally, not gaining a whole lot of respect for who Wake has beaten to date. This team coming up this weekend would probably be the most talented team that they've seen to date, although I would say this Syracuse win is looking better and better by the week. This Syracuse team is much better than people knew at the time.
And Virginia.
In Virginia. Certainly a 6-3 football team right now, and that was a very good football game. Actually, that Wake took control of in the second half, beat Louisville at the gun on a last-second field goal. And so it's been quite the ride for Wake Forest. People took attention to that Army score a couple of weeks ago, of course, at 70-56. So if there are any concerns coming down the stretch, Les, you sized this up on the offensive and defensive sides. What would those concerns be in trying to complete this run?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is probably just the ferocity of the schedule upcoming. I mean, at best, and that's at best, you've got 4 coin flip style games coming up. I mean, there's none of these 4 teams in which Wake is a prohibitive favorite. One could argue that, not having beat Clemson at Clemson since 1998, despite the fact that the Tigers have, a woeful offense, you got to figure Wake's still, a big underdog there. So like I said, at best 4 coin flip games, and it's hard to win 4 coin flips in a row. I mean, just statistically, the odds of doing that are against you. And even if you do that, then all of a sudden you're likely playing Pitt in the conference championship game, and that game would probably have close to 200 points scored. So, it's a tough road ahead for Wake Forest. I think that's probably the biggest challenge. Offensively, they're clicking right now. And then defensively, they've been inconsistent. If they could play defense the way they played at Virginia or even last week against Duke, then they're going to win a lot of games down the stretch. But if they play defense like they did against Syracuse or Louisville or, heaven forbid, at Army, then these are going to be really difficult games for Wake Forest to win. So, yeah, defensively is the concern. Do they have the depth in the secondary to keep up with that talent that UNC has at quarterback and Sam Howell and those explosive wide receivers? That's a big question mark coming up right up Saturday at noon. So, but I think defense has been inconsistent. Offense has been pretty much lights out the whole season. And then the schedule difficulty just really ramps up from here. And it's what everybody I had Wake starting the season 7-1. I had them probably losing at Virginia was the game I pegged to lose early. And I had them finishing 9-3. I think we all looked at the schedule and said, okay, these last 4 games are tougher than the first 8. And it's still that way. So that's the big question, is how they do down the stretch against the ramped up competition.
Join us for our predictions on Patreon. As you can see on the banner there, 13-5 against the spread, 107-69 against the spread for the season. And we got 20 media members on there that we have a friendly little competition every week. So you can get my picks there on Patreon. Again, 13-5 last week, 107-69 for the season. Just search Mark Rogers TV. We got Les Johns on the line from Demon Deacons Digest on 247 Sports. So we would invite you to head on over there and check out Les and the rest of the staff there at Demon Deacons Digest. Les, I'm going to make this statement that you're well aware of, but just to set up the rest of the conversation concerning schedule, college football playoff ranking, all of that was revealed last night. I did a comparison video a couple weeks ago of the Cincinnati schedule and the Wake schedule, which are very comparable to date. But once we move forward, they separate themselves considerably. Most people that are following the typical college football playoff contenders look at Wake's schedule and dismiss it. I do call-in shows almost every day. People call in, basically think that Wake cannot make the college football playoff. And I remind people, of course, that no Power 5 undefeated champion has missed a playoff, and there were only two scenarios in which a one-loss Power 5 champion had to miss the playoff because somebody had to be left out. So Wake is going to play 5 quality opponents down the stretch here. I believe the schedule rank right now is 98th, and Cincinnati's at 100th. But Cincinnati's is basically going to stay pat, and Wake's is going to jump considerably here in the next few weeks. So I just don't think that there's any question that an undefeated Wake team, this would be just a travesty if a Wake team that went undefeated was left out of the playoff. But even a one-loss Wake team would have an argument to make the playoff.
I mean, I'm not going to argue with you there. When I saw the rankings last night, I wasn't the least bit shocked to see Wake listed 9th. I was a little shocked at how dismissive some of the commentators were, especially like Herb Street. This is a team that, like you said, if they go undefeated, I think they get into the college football playoff. I honestly don't think they finish undefeated because I just think it's too difficult of a task. Yeah. They can, it's just unlikely, right? It's within the range of outcomes, but it's not the most likely outcome. But if they do, I mean, I think it bodes really well for Wake Forest that both NC State and Pittsburgh were both ranked in the college football playoff rankings last night. That helps a lot. If you're a Wake Forest fan, you probably want NC State to win at Florida State this weekend so that when they come to town, it's a ranked matchup and has a lot of excitement. And it becomes a quality win if you win it, right? Whereas if they lose, if they look bad at Florida State, then they fall out of the college football playoff rankings, and it's not considered a quality win all of a sudden. Winning at Clemson will be a good win. Clemson is still Clemson. They're going to be tough to beat. So you're right. The schedule difficulty is going to look better on paper. And if Wake does go 5-0, they likely have a couple of top 25 wins in NC State and Pittsburgh, and that's going to look really good on their resume.
Les, you mentioned Dave Clawson's work at the top of the segment. And, again, a lot of people from a national standpoint don't recognize what's going on here, that there are places like Florida State and Miami that have all sorts of recruiting advantages in their backyard that are not playing, certainly for Florida State just for the last few years, but for Miami, we're talking about 15 years doing what Dave Clawson's done over the last few years in regards to building a team, having some ugly seasons, some ugly offenses. I remember Wake not being able to score a point against what they had a 3-0 game against Boston College a few years ago. They really, I think John Wolford in that group was the first one to really put together a dynamic offense. But Dave Clawson, when people are talking best coaches in the country and top 10 lists, if they really know what they're talking about, then they include Dave Clawson. Other lists don't because they're not looking well enough about what's going on here. And it's just amazing that this is a 7-5, 8-4 program that's winning bowl games and doing really good things on a regular basis now.
Yeah. I mean, I have a great level of admiration and respect for Coach Clawson and what he's done at Wake Forest. I mean, he's just now this year climbed over 500 in his career at Wake Forest, but that was after starting, 2 seasons at 3-9, 3-9, just kind of laying the foundation. Since then it's been 5 straight bowl games, and there's been other years, 2019, stands out as that's a team that started 7-1 and also was in the college football playoff rankings, but then experienced a rash of injuries. And Clausen would argue that's also a team that down the stretch started playing for themselves and playing for the rankings instead of playing together as a team. And they're hoping that the lessons learned from 2019 will help carry them on this season, because a lot of those guys are back now. Wake has a model that he redshirts like 95% of his guys coming in. So they might be 2 and 3 stars when they enter Wake Forest, but by the time they're redshirt seniors, those are effective 4 and 5 star players, right? So there's only 5 upperclassmen that started their careers at Wake Forest right now that didn't redshirt at some point in their career. He redshirts everybody. But that extra year of development, that extra year of training in the weight room pays dividends when they're a 5th-year senior. And now in this case, in some areas, 6th-year seniors because of the free year that they were allowed because of the COVID season last year. So that's kind of the model. It's a developmental program. They don't expect most of their guys to come in as a freshman and make a big impact. And they recruit a ton of 2 and 3 star talent. But once again, by the time they're seniors and juniors, they have a lot of experience, a lot of size, a lot of speed, and a lot of talent.
So all of that said, Les, for this particular season, and who knows about going forward, this conference is unlike the other 4 conferences. There is almost no hierarchy this particular season. Obviously, Clemson rules the conference and has in the past, and Florida State before them, and you would consider Florida State, Miami to have the best opportunity, most people would think, to join Clemson. And of course, Mac Brown, based on the recruiting in the last few years, is making a bid, you would think, to join Clemson as well. That's been the projection. But the results on the field this year is that pretty much if you throw away Duke, you can match up any teams and you don't know what the outcome's going to be. It's a bunch of 7-5, 8-4 looking teams. The results are going to disperse a little bit beyond that, but that's what it looks like. So long term, knowing that you're stuck with Clemson in the division, we'll see if they're able to retain and get back to their place that they've maintained for the last 6 or 7 years. But it had Wake been in the Coastal Division, who knows how many bids to the ACC championship game they would have contended for seriously down the stretch. But what are the expectations, the reasonable expectations for this program going forward?
I think the reasonable expectations for the Wake Forest program is to continue to be a developmental program, continue to achieve bowl status pretty much every year. And every 3rd or 4th year, maybe Clausen would probably argue a little bit more often than that, but every 3rd or 4th year, you get that magic combination and you can make a run for an ACC championship. Of course, Clemson, Clemson becoming human makes that, mortal, makes that a little bit more viable, right? Because, surely Wake would have been a coastal champion at one of those previous years, because it's just been coastal chaos. Everybody's had their chance. But yeah, I think it's a team that every 3rd or 4th year, they can put together a magical season, make a run at an ACC championship, and be in an elite level bowl. I think college football playoff is probably not a pipe dream, but it's kind of pie in the sky. That's not something that's going to present itself as an option all that often at Wake Forest. And why it's out there as a possibility right now, it's incumbent upon Wake Forest to take advantage of it.
Enjoyed the conversation with Les Johns. You can catch his work at Demon Deacons Digest on 247 Sports. Wake taking on North Carolina. Again, non-conference game, not counting toward the Atlantic Division for Wake. Big game coming up against NC State. Of course, Wake, if I'm adding this up correctly, NC State has 2 losses in conference, correct? Or just the 1 loss against Miami?
Just the 1 loss against Miami.
Yes. So that would
they lost a non-conference game early in the season, if memory serves.
Yeah. So NC State obviously could take control of the division head-to-head with a win, but otherwise Wake Forest in control right now as an undefeated team in the ACC and overall. Les, we appreciate you stopping by and breaking it down for us.
Thanks for having me on, Mark. Have a great week.